Yeah, I'm working with a tutoring student that lives in Minnesota. So he was telling me it was snowing the other day. He's
I
like,
know. It's like I want spring, but I know that if spring happens too fast here, we'll lose,
yeah,
it'll blossom and then there'll be a frost that'll kill everything. So
right,
gotta
exactly.
be patient.
Wow,
But what about you now?
well,
I,
I've been
I
thinking a
suppose
lot. There might be a delay. Like, it was almost a
a
year
little,
ago since you had to leave here, right? Was it
yeah,
March
right.
22nd or
It was
something like
a
that?
little over a year ago. So this time I think I was driving back from
Yeah.
Massachusetts after picking up my kids.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, I've been thinking about you a lot, and the year that is like a time warp or something, it feels like Twilight Zone kind of year.
I
And
know.
um the daffodils are blooming and the flowers on the trees, and I'm like, Lee was here last year when this was all happening, and the anniversary of everything is just very surreal, I think. So,
It is. It
yeah.
really is.
But I
And
saw Yeah, go ahead.
I just found out that we may be getting the vaccine in the next, hopefully the whole family will get the vaccine in the next month or so. So, and
Excellent.
uh,
Excellent. Yeah, because all of your kids moved back home, right? And or most of them?
most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
It's which is a weird blessing in disguise. I wouldn't have had this time with them
Yeah.
if not for a pandemic. They'd all been off on their own. So
Yeah, how nice is that? And I've been wanting to connect with you for so long, and it does feel like a blur, but I remember seeing your post about your work and the gallery show a few weeks ago that closed, right? And I
yeah.
was clicking through some of the images and I'm like, oh, that started here.
Oh, right. Yes, really going to your place was what I mean, the intent of going to your place was to be able to have time to figure out what the heck I wanted to do and how to do it and with what.
Yeah.
And it was awesome time. And then to meet other artists and to meet other people and to be with the animals and see the spring come in. Everything was inspiring, you know.
Awesome.
So
Yeah, and we didn't really get the chance to kind of talk formally about it. So I'd love to just kind of recall from your story kind of what precipitated the the residency, and maybe how you found me and some of your goals, and then, oh, I see the chickens in the background and that painting right there. And then,
oh yeah, yeah.
and then kind of a reflection on what you feel like, even though the time was cut short, you did do quite a bit of work. You had you had the portraits of the hens, and you did a self-portrait, and you had a few landscapes that you
I
did.
did 3 self-portraits.
Wow.
Yeah, I did landscapes. I can work pretty fast, which is
Yeah,
really nice and fun.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so
Maybe if we backtrack and start at the beginning, or start at the before the beginning.
so so a few years ago, our woods started to flood, right? And we couldn't figure out why. And we live right off of a public trail, which is real nice, a walking and bike trail. Um, and the trail was flooding too. And so my husband figured it must be a beaver. So we searched for the beaver house, and sure enough, a beaver was building dams along this creek that runs through the edge of our property. And every morning we would go there with rakes and with shovels, and we'd break up the dam. And then we'd go back the next morning and the dams would be rebuilt. It
Wow.
was just like this. it was this competition between us and the beaver, and everyone's like, "Beavers never give up. No, you're not gonna stop it." And then we were thinking, well, maybe we can live trap it, and but it just became a routine. Every single morning we go there and break up the dams that he'd built, and it was fun. And eventually, the beaver just disappeared. One day, in the middle of the summer, it just stopped. There were no dams, and since then nothing, which is nice. So my daughter, who is a creative writer, she just graduated. Oh my gosh, it's the anniversary of a year ago. So she wrote up a silly story about the beaver, and it was the chickens that stopped the beaver. So that was her story. It was Our Four Ladies and Mr. Beaver was the name of her story.
Nice.
And then I also have a friend who runs a gallery in a town about an hour or so away from us. And my daughter and I got the idea, maybe we could collaborate. I could do paintings and she could edit her story, and we can kind of work back and forth. And so she edited the story, and then she's off in college doing her own thing, and she's writing books and all that kind of stuff. So the story just kind of sat there. I'm like, I need to do this. And so we got a gallery space, and I think we were scheduled to get into the gallery about a year and a half before the show. So it was a long wait time. And in the meantime, I'm like, I need to do this. And I had just heard of artist residencies. I don't even know where. And I looked it up and I saw your place, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was just something so appealing about the nature, and there was a river there, and the animals, and I come from a farm, so I love animals. I never had donkeys, and then you were so nice.
Oh,
And
thank you.
it was
Sweet.
like, fine, and you said yes, and it was like meant to be. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it gave me the time to figure out how to approach, I'm not an illustrator.
Mhm.
I mean, I could be, but I have an art painting background. Um, so I had to figure out how to approach a story. And I wanted to do it from an art perspective rather than a I don't want to say that illustration isn't art, but you know what the difference
Yeah. Maybe
between, like,
illustrating the words rather than your interpretation of the story.
yes, right. I wanted to be inspired by parts of the story and
Yeah.
see what I came up with. And
Right.
so that's what your residency allowed me to do. It was,
That's amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
that's so great. It was such a lovely time because you were here and then Kaylee came and then I was hosting the student from South Korea, and we were able to go up to Nashville a couple times. We went to the art store, and then we went to the Saturday art crawl, and that was kind of like we kind of knew what was happening, and we had been talking. We'd had a few dinners, and we'd been talking about like, hey, Italy is shutting down. This is really crazy. What's happening here? And then we went to that first Saturday in March, and they had just had the tornado, I think the week
Oh, yes.
in Nashville. So
Yeah.
the weather was really extreme and the time had changed. And I remember like I would go and feed the donkeys and I'd be like, Lee, let's look at the sunset, right? Because it was just so
My
dramatic,
gosh,
right?
the sunsets there were just something. Like, if I did another series
Uh-huh.
there, it would be the Tennessee sunsets,
It just
most definitely.
it was so
They were
dramatic. So
gorgeous.
it's like this really interesting time of just like getting to know you guys, and the two of you were working really well, just kind of in your own flow. And then, we were kind of socializing a little bit together and telling the story. And we had one of the drawing nights with Juliet, and we went to that art
Oh,
open.
I'd forgotten her name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Julia.
I almost forgot it too because I've hosted other students and the names kind of blend together. But yeah, I remembered that it was Juliet because I was talking about that story too. And then all of a sudden it was just like uh
I
like
know.
like something like a a sinkhole or something opened up beneath us, and
Right.
everything had to stop, and you were trying to take care of um, your daughter, help her with graduation. Well, they couldn't graduate, right? And evacuate or whatever it was. And um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it was just like a lovely time that you were here. And um, I think a lot about that over the past year just because it got really crazy and it was just really bizarre time. And as the daffodils started to bloom again, the dog is now outside 100% of the time because we had
Mhm.
um,
Oh
bobcat
God.
a bobcat on the
Yeah.
camera was coming and eating the chickens. And the last
Did they?
straw, yeah, I mean, they were quarantined. And then after a couple of, like a week or a few weeks or a month or whatever, I started letting them out again in the afternoon. And we had this crazy rainstorm. And the dog like begged me to come inside. So I let him in. And I was working where I'm sitting right now, and the rain came through, and I was doing some tutoring, and it cleared up. And I looked at the dog. I'm like, let's go back outside. And he just kind of like lifted his head up. He's like, no.
Oh
So I went
no.
outside and I was like counting the chickens. And I'm like, one, where's number 11? And I walked over to kind of a side of the yard, and there was a trail of feathers.
Oh
So it
shoot.
was super sad. And it was the lavender Orpington that was so sweet. Yeah, she was so pretty. And she would let me pick her up and stuff. So I can imagine that she was probably like the slowest, easiest one to catch. But since
Yeah.
then, the dog has been outside 100% of the time, and the chickens are quarantined. But right now, I'm looking out the window, and there's a ton of cardinals that have decided to live here. So they're just flying all over the
Wow.
place. And the chickens, they're still quarantined, but I let them out like supervised. But the dog is outside. That helps a lot. The front chickens
Yeah.
were down to, four, but I'm trying a little experiment. I bought a miniature incubator. So I'm going to try a little
Cool.
experiment to get a few more of those really good laying, because the ones up there just lay like the most beautiful eggs as possible. So
Was
yeah,
the bobcat? Did the bobcat get the chickens out in the front at all?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, both of them. Oh
He was
shoot. Okay.
he was he figured out where they were all living and would walk in daylight. So I figured it was
Oh,
under like between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 3:30 till dusk. So hungry. And then I ended up putting game cameras, trying to figure out which direction they were coming from. At least two, maybe three different bobcats that were coming around. And
okay.
one in the middle of the morning, like at 9 a.m., would trot over and stealthy. Like I got it on the game camera, just like crawling on the ground and wagging its tail, and then just kind of like looking into the chicken zone and just realizing that it probably couldn't get out. So it like gave up and walked away. So I have a really good video of that. Um,
Wow.
but I also lost additional peacocks or peahens, and had to fortify
Oh,
that. So I figured out that it was climbing a tree and had torn like a hole so it could like come, because I had kind of constructed that around the tree, but somehow or other it figured it out. So the dog is outside now all the time, and that's helped a lot. Now the donkeys are split into smaller groups because of the babies and um, the Smoky and Ducky and all that kind of stuff. So right now, just as of like maybe 2 weeks ago, I split them up into smaller groups, and I think Pepper's going to have a baby for the first
okay.
time. Yeah,
Okay.
so obviously that'll happen maybe um, I'm guessing maybe closer to the end of the summer. She looks, I don't know, I think it's more of an accident than anything because she's the only one that hasn't gotten pregnant. So she was kind of the last
Okay.
one. Like when I separated all of them, she was like stuck with the boys for a while. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, and just some other things that, we had that freeze a few weeks ago with big snow,
Yeah.
and I remember that when you
And
were
the
here, we did have some
peeps.
snow, and it snowed on the daffodils, but it like melted. It was really pretty, but it melted away. I think you walked over to the river and took some pictures and maybe painted um, something with the snow. I feel like
Mhm.
you did a few
I
compositions.
took lots.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah, a few compositions.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So just slowly, kind of, getting the landscape and just seeing for the first year, like what day do the flowers bloom, so that for future people I
Yeah.
can, say if you want to be here when the cherry blossoms bloom, you need to be here, middle of March or whatever kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
Um,
I was there when the daffodils bloomed and the crocus was up, and
uh,
but I missed the cherry blossoms. COVID happened
you had just,
just
yeah, you had to leave because they just came. And we've had storms the last few days, so all the little blossoms are flying around and they're landing on the donkeys. It's so pretty. They're just like little sprinkles on the donkeys. So I took a couple of pictures of that. Yeah.
oh,
So, yeah, so at the beginning of February, I had two additional artists kind of come at the same time as you and Kaylee did. And it's just been a really interesting kind of reboot or like the regeneration along with spring
yeah.
happening at the same time as when you guys had to leave. So what do you
Oh,
think
wow.
that, you had such lovely pieces. What do you think was in hindsight, the best part about being here besides what you've already told me? What do you think?
Best part of being there, um I I think it was it for me, and it might not be this way for everyone, but for me it was the um having to answer to no one but myself in regard to my time, how I worked, where I worked, when I ate. It was I have uh, never been alone
Mm,
before this. So I went, from my family, even through college, I went locally. So I stayed at home. And then I got married and then I had children. And it was just like, it was literally the first time that my time was my own.
so
And so
nice.
being there, yeah, being there, it was wide open and I got to like really understand myself and how I worked and, focus on strictly my needs. I've always focused on my needs, but I didn't have to focus on anyone else either. So it was lovely. And then being with you, you're you're so like you're just a lovely, intelligent person, and to be able to like, be, you know, have you daily, or not have you daily. I mean, you were really good at that. Like I didn't feel pressured to like have to speak to you or whatever. It was just it was exactly what I needed. And I think that you were open to understand what whoever is there needs from you, right?
Mhm.
So it was great spending time with you and it was great spending time alone. And it's just a very easy time that lent itself to art and creativity.
Yeah,
So
that's lovely.
um,
Thank you. Well, I'm really, I'm just so happy that you found me because I want to support artists who are at whatever stage of their career. And I feel like emerging artists um, can also be re-emerging artists, right? So
Right.
like yourself, you have obviously a long, you've trained in art, you have a long history of doing it, you have a beautiful studio where you are, but because your priorities were your family, which is, you know, amazing, right? You have amazing children. And I think, did you tell me that they did the unschooling or something like that?
We
Um,
yeah, we
yeah.
unschooled, yeah.
So you were just immersed in life, right? And
Yeah.
had life experiences and this story that had happened to you with the beaver and stuff, and it was fresh and fun and a really lovely collaborative project with your daughter. I just thought it was just a really poetic thing, and I just wanted to be a part of it and support it. And I think that a lot of you know, because I'm a new residency program, but my, you know, with my background as an educator, you know, I've worked mostly with people who are kind of discovering what they will want to do, or, you know, and my own experience, not necessarily knowing what I want to do, but kind of just going with the flow type of thing, and immersing myself in it. But when I started considering you know, establishing a residency program, I discovered this whole network of people who've been doing it for a long time, right? 100 years, 25 years, whatever, right? Is it, yeah, I won't name the names, but there's there's a lot of them that are so famous that you know, it's a bit more rigorous as far as the access, right? And because they have
Right.
funding and boards and that kind of thing, I think that it limits itself to more established artists who have um, maybe have a little bit more of a name or something like that. And I'm not sure if that's like fair, right? So there's other lanes, I think, for people who are artists who are maybe dip in and out of art. Someone's here right now, and I think that that's kind of, it seems like conversations with him, he's had kind of a career and studied art, but also, you know, dipping in and out of it. Um, and what does that, you know, where is the value in that? Because it is valuable, right? You had a really amazing project, and I'm so happy that you had that chance, because it is a safe place too. It's like you're alone, but you're not alone, right? So,
Yes, yeah.
and Haley was like down in her room, kind of doing her thing. So there was like a shared space, but you weren't necessarily like trying to make dinner for children all day long, or you know, cater to
No, no.
like you were saying, you know.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, your residency. So when I had never, I mean, I trained as an artist and I lived as an artist when I was younger. But then I got out of it with the, you know, with the family thing. And then I started getting back into it in about 2017. I went by myself to Guatemala and I I painted and traveled, and it was like my first step back into art, you know. Um, but even then, I'd never heard of an art residency, which is like, that's crazy to me because, like you said, some of them have been around for, you know, 100 years or longer. Um, and then when I did check them out, they ranged everywhere from, like, you know, resorts where you'd pay like, you know, $3,000, $4,000 for a couple weeks, um, to totally funded, highly competitive, you know, well known. So it's literally a spectrum. Um, and so I was like, I didn't have a big body of work
Mhm.
to present. I was, like you said, re-emerging, which I don't even know that there's a category that anybody, you know, in art residency even considers that kind of stuff. So that was weird.
Yeah.
Um, but I had this thing that I knew I wanted to do, and I was passionate about it, and I had a timeline too. So I mean, yours was just the perfect ground, and I don't think there's a lot like you out there.
Yeah.
So you are very much needed in this whole spectrum of residencies,
That's good to
definitely.
know. That's good to know. Yeah. I'm really excited. I've got a lot of people contacting me now and starting to line things up through probably end of, I don't like the people that I was talking to in April. I think it's still kind of COVID related scheduling
Yeah.
issues. So April kind of has no one ever ended up confirming with me, but I from May until August, there's um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So as we move forward, it's really exciting, and I've picked up some of my own work as well, and I'm trying to kick myself into that balance between starting something new, right, and having to kind of keep afloat with what I'm trying to do and doing
Yes.
it all myself with the help of artists who are here, volunteers or whatever, and all the kind of like side income, side hustles, and
Yeah.
getting distracted by those things. And I think that that's been my lesson this past year is like it was a good year of just kind of slowing down a little bit more. I discovered that I could get certified as a forest therapy guide. Which is
Yes.
yeah, so that is kind of based off the Japanese tradition of Shinrin Yoku, which they call forest bathing, but apparently they have a copyright on it. So I've
But
really what was that?
didn't you start while I was you started that while I was there. You
Well,
started those
I
classes.
was actually yeah, so I was actually when you were here, I was actually just doing this little like online non-certification. It was just like an online like buy this course. It's like, it's normally this price, but it's on sale for like $30 or something. So when I was
No,
doing
no,
that,
I was thinking of something else. You actually were going someplace. Was it through the Chamber of Commerce?
oh yeah, the chamber, I was doing a leadership class with the chamber. Yeah,
Oh, that.
which also just kind of stopped doing stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out
wow. Okay.
when you were here, I was starting to do the chamber. The chamber
And
has
that.
like leadership class that they do every year, and then that had to stop. And then when you
Oh,
left, I ended up hosting some workaway people who
yes.
all of a sudden all of their plans had collapsed. People, one really amazing woman, she had made plans to be in France all summer and she couldn't go, so she
Oh,
found me on the workaway. So it kind of shifted from the art residency to a bunch of us just kind of holding down the fort of like being. We didn't have, they didn't have any place to go. Another Elise was she had planned on going. She was actually in like Europe, in Amsterdam or something, when the country started closed down, and she had to come home and was just looking for a place to do some work. She had been working on like organic farms and that kind of thing. So
okay. Yeah.
that started in like April, and then I was hosting a variety of different people over the year, and then picking up some like tutoring work and that kind of thing. Um, and I was just working really crazy hours, and uh, keep telling myself, well, the whole point of me being here is to also be able to have a practice myself, right? Um, so I've been trying to get to that stage, and you might have seen some of my posts, but I realized that my sabbatical project was about 6 years ago, and I had gone on my sabbatical, but I never really did anything with the work. So I started saying, okay, every day I'm gonna go through the pictures of the day and like edit the imagery and like write about it and start a blog. And boy, was that tough.
Yeah.
I went like a week, and now I'm like, maybe I can't keep that pace up. But if I was on a
Oh,
residency, myself,
oh,
then that's all you have to do, right? You have to cook for yourself and you don't have to worry about
right.
everything else. But I am
Yeah.
definitely trying to get that practice where I can, a good half a day be doing pottery or my artwork of whatever it might be. And I love your kitty. Who's your kitty?
I need some love right now,
Oh,
I guess.
he's so sweet. What's his name again?
Rats. 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 So don't ask. The kids named him many years ago.
Oh, he's sweet. mine came up and needed a hug as well. So yeah, so I'm trying
So
to.
you wait, so you're not
Oh,
gonna
I am
do
doing
your
it. It's just like
fall?
it's just taking so long. Yeah, each post was like hours and hours. I'm like, I can't keep this pace up. I'm not even. And then yeah, so I'm kind of, I fell behind, but my goal is to try and, organize my schedule so that I have to plan for it, right? So instead of like every day
Yeah.
trying to get everything done that was that day, um it just became really intense because I was literally searching for my photos, like where they're in different folders,
Oh,
and it was just a rough time of when I had taken the sabbatical. So I had all the document and all of the data, the digital imagery, but had never had a chance to sort through it. So I'm kind of in
yeah.
that stage. But yeah, it was really great the
That's a lot.
first week that I was doing it. But it's been a lot. And yeah, so I think I'm on day 7, but I'm a couple weeks behind. But that's my goal. And then I realized that I was in Egypt. It'll be 10 years this summer. So I think I might do something similar
Oh,
but smaller scale. Yeah. Um, so yeah, it's I think that it's just a really lovely place to be quiet and finding people who are interested in doing, my mantra is like nature. Nature is your muse or your collaborator, or your inspiration, or whatever, your the thing that you might need benefit from. And there is data research that artists in the past, writers, artists, they need to go, famous Walden Pond, right? They need to go into the nature to have ideas and the focus and all of that kind of stuff. So I feel like that aligns with what my goals are. Um, so how tell me a little bit about the show, and when you got back and got everyone settled down, um, how long did it take for you to get back into, because you did have the deadline for the book and the show. How long
yes.
you had to go help your daughter get out of school? She wasn't able to graduate. I mean, she wasn't able to walk because of graduation. It was a very crazy time. But
Mhm.
tell me about how the year went with actually finishing the project and what you think about the project now that it's finished.
Well, so the year went terribly. I got so far away from art coming back and then trying to figure out the world with a lockdown and a pandemic. It just scrambled everything. Um, and then also, the slow realization that it wasn't going to be an in-person show, and so I didn't have to frame anything or
Mm,
transport anything, and it was like, and then trying to figure out, well, is it even going to happen? I was thinking it was going to be canceled. Um, I don't know. It was weird, and then getting the notice that it's going to be online, and then trying to figure out, well, the heck, what do you have an art show online? What is that?
yeah.
How does it even done? Everything, now we're kind of used to this kind of stuff, Zoom meetings and online shows, but then everything just felt so weirdly up in the air, and like you said, surreal, right?
Hmm.
Nothing seemed permanent. Time felt different.
Hmm.
Everything felt different. Um,
I thought I was the
so
only
and
one. I thought I was the only one
no,
that time felt different. And so it's been really interesting, like talking to people about it, or just seeing like random things on the news or Facebook. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that is feeling this, like, what day is it? What time is it? Where am I? Kind of thing. It
right?
literally to me feels like some sort of suspension. And I love science fiction, and grew up watching like science fiction movies and Quantum Leap and all those kind of like, thinking about like
Yeah.
time travel, and like I'm really into that. And that's what I'm like, is this are we getting punked by something, you know? Like, are we supposed to be we're supposed to be doing something, I think, through this year, right? Of
Yes.
contemplation and agitation of our normalcy and anyway, so I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, time was
No,
surreal.
it's
Yeah.
good.
But you
It
were
was
able to
real,
kind
and
of
it
get
was,
the energy back to finish the project.
yes, and um, that was, it was strange. So yeah, I finally got it back, and then I was like, when I when things felt like they were solidifying, then it was
Mhm.
easy to get back into it. And so I have an art room. I've got right now. I've got like half of an art room, so everything's kind of pushed to one end because we're remodeling a bathroom and doing mosaics and tiling in it, which is exciting. It's a whole nother
Awesome.
form of art. Um, but it was, once things solidified and I realized how the show is going to be and that it actually will still happen, um, it was fun to get back into it. And I got back into it like pretty much full time, like painting, 6 to 8 hours a day. And
Wow.
it was nice. And like I said, I can paint fast. Oh, and when I was at your place, I was doing pastels, which I
Yeah.
loved. But here I'm doing mainly acrylic. I've
Okay.
been painting with paint. Um, so
That so that helps with the time then because the pastel is a little bit more intricate.
yeah, I think I can. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know because there's a pastels have a point where you just can't do anything anymore if you're, because you do it on sanded ground. It just doesn't hold pigment anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was, once I got into it, it went fast, and then I had multiple things. Then I went back with my daughter. It was nice to be with her because then we went back and we paired what I was doing or what I was thinking with how the story was, and we went back and forth and switched it. So eventually we had the show, and it was underwhelming. An online show is just
Yeah.
underwhelming, I think, and it was anticlimactic. Um, and I was like, "What? This was it?
Yeah.
This was my." So it was like, I don't think I have a solo show or anything like that online only again, and only on Facebook online. They
Yeah.
didn't even have it like in a website. The gallery, I don't know. Lovely gallery, lovely woman. I'd love to have a show there, but in person, in place. But in the meantime, then after the show was done, we took all the text and the images, and I made a little video out of it. So it's a 10-minute video of a, like a storybook, I guess. So
Great.
it's got the text, and the art will pop up, and it just, and that I thought was actually more successful than the
Yeah.
show itself.
Yeah.
I was happy that at least I have something,
Right.
something to show. So,
Right.
and I sold a couple paintings, which is nice. So the chicken the chicken one in the background is
Yeah.
sold, which is
Nice.
fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think sometimes well, now you have a whole body of work and you have the entire, it's a project that is completed and maybe there'll be a day down the road where you can integrate that into an actual exhibition or as a traveling thing or it gets put up somewhere else, but that you documented it in a video form, I think that's fantastic. So the
uh,
fact that you just kind
well,
of continued during the pandemic and you're like, I'm just going to get this project done, like that's it's very valuable. I think that that's
um,
awesome. Yeah.
well, there's something about the pandemic, like you said. What do you do? It's almost like that this is valuable time, that you should do something with it, right? And it's really easy to beat yourself up for doing it slowly or not doing enough, and worrying you're going to look back at this time and think, oh my God, I had all that time and this is all I did. I should have done, to kick yourself and to beat yourself up like that is crazy. So I think it's almost like what this time is teaching me is to literally slow down,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to think about quality of time rather than quantity
Yeah.
of time. So, but the other thing, the show now, what I'm hoping to do with this particular story, plus we've got another story we're going to be doing the same thing with.
Nice.
Um, but I'm hoping to get this up as a show, like a physical show, eventually when COVID is under control, and travel through libraries
Oh,
um, as a storybook kind of, yeah, as a
yeah.
storybook show. So
That's great. I've had some families here with kids, um, like camping and that kind of thing. And,
oh,
you
I
know,
saw the pictures. Yeah.
yeah, and just the kids just love the animals so much. So I think that that's a really great connecting with libraries, connecting with literacy, connecting with kids, showing them that art is a valuable thing, right? And there's like real people that do it. And um, I think that's really incredible. Yeah, it's a different thing than a museum or gallery show for, a wine and cheese thing, right?
Yes,
Um,
right.
yeah, so that's great that your collaboration with your daughter's turning into some more projects. That's really
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. Now,
Yeah.
what besides the collaborative project with her, you said you're applying for another residency program for like next
Yes.
year or
So
something?
yeah, one that I probably won't get, but
Okay.
like it having so just the application itself, it's a very old one that's like fully funded and you get stipend and it's like, a very desirable kind of thing that I probably don't have a chance at getting. However, the application process made me edit and hone my bio, my statement, and a statement of purpose. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just for me, to have this to force me to do these things that I needed to do anyway. Um, and then to be able to edit them and have them in different forms. Um, Anything that I do in the future now is going to be so much easier because these particular little texts um, that are very valuable in moving me forward. But not only that, they're very valuable in like um, honing my vision,
Mhm.
honing, where I want to go, reminding myself of what I've done, and giving kind of value to what I want to do.
That's
It
awesome.
was, yeah, there are so many reasons to do it. The least of which was getting this residency,
Right.
in
Yeah, that's
these
awesome.
pictures.
I I feel like I come across these like, you know, little stories like, so and so didn't accomplish this until they were this age or whatever, like and the famous Japanese artist, I want to say Hokusai, something like that, who did a lot of the ukiyo-e, the woodblock prints. The last time I was in Japan, so that was May 2019, I remember going to an exhibit of this person's life work. And, there was some sort of narrative or acknowledgement of like his best work was done at like the age of 90 or something, right? So it's, that we're in our craft, and we need these moments of thinking and refining the craft and the pursuit of that, and then also going slow, um, and just, reminding ourselves. And I try to explain this to some of I've been tutoring, um, mostly English, actually, English writing, and but study skills and homework and things like that. How to decipher someone's assignment, right? What are they talking about? in a Zoom environment because all the kids are, not in school anymore and really falling through the cracks and having a lot of anxiety and all that kind of stuff. But I'm voyeuring into all these different educational systems where either some students don't have enough or they're just falling behind because they get confused and there's no response from the educator. No one's like um, emailing them back, or they only have a certain anyway. Or the other extreme is like these just unreal demands on the time for a 16-year-old, right? So we could have another conversation about education because I know that we talked about that in your choice of what you did with your own kids. But I kind of was like trying to encourage them. And even this past week, I have some new high school kids that I've been working with. Like asking them. They're sitting at a desk all day, looking at a screen, right? And then, well, do you have dinner? Well, I'll go get food and I'll sit back down at my computer, right? Do you get to go outside?
Yeah.
Well, it's cold, whatever, like making excuses, right? So I'm worried that we have a generation that is, and also what technology has created in our society is this like tendency to just be on all the time and not go slow and not live in a way that human life is supposed to be, right? And that like, we're not supposed to be robots. We're not supposed to be, our brain can't function thinking and paying attention for 7 hours straight, right? And then taking like and with no food. And, it's
Right.
amazing that these kids, they don't eat anything. And I don't know how they're surviving. They're just surviving on like sugar or something. I'm not really sure. Adrenaline. Um, but yeah, that's kind of some of the lessons that I've been really trying to stick to of like for myself and the other and when I'm talking to people. So the other night I was really busy and I'm like, I really want to do the blog, the photography stuff. But you know what? It's a dark night and the stars are out. And I think I should just sit with the dog, right? So I just stayed outside for like an hour. And,
Good for you. That's
like I
terrific.
feel like it's like, okay, there's meaning. We don't always have to be doing something for life to have meaning, right? Like physically active. We don't have to be on the computer all the time. We don't have to be on our phone all the time. Um, we we need to allow our brains the space to like think and dream and daydream, or just wow, look at that, or sitting with the animals or whatever, right? Before, slowing down before we go to bed to have a better night's sleep or what have you. So I've started this forest therapy practice, and when artists are coming in, I do a complimentary forest walk with them. And the one of the people that's been here, so he's been on it twice. Um, so I had one on Sunday with several like someone that was only here for a few people that were only here for like a weekend or like 4 or 5 days. So one Britain, which I'm going to follow up with her in a few weeks, she does more theatrical theater arts background. And then an artist couple from Nashville, one of them does murals, and they were actually more on like a vacation kind of thing, but like a creative vacation. So I took them on the forest walk, and there's a it's a series of sensory. It's basically like a guided sensory experience of what are you noticing about whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I gave an invitation, and people have to leave, so they're wandering around, and I walked past some moss over there. Um, and was like moving my backpack to put it aside so I could just kind of like look at the moss. And I noticed this little, like, because everything was green. And then I noticed this like little, like oyster shell color kind of like shimmering. And I'm like, what is that? And my eyes are, I'm wearing glasses. So I got down on the ground. I'm like, that's a snail. It's like, you know what? I got 12 minutes to kill before these people come back. So I just sat there and I videotaped it, right? I videoed it. It was actually easier to see it because I could see it on my on the screen better because I was zooming,
Yeah.
I was like zoom in to him. So I was watching this snail for like 12 minutes. I posted it on YouTube. Like, when do we have time to do that, right? I was just like, this is so cool. Like, look at him and his like little antlers and stuff. Like, I never would have done that. I might have done that when I was like 4, but you don't really remember
Right.
that, right? Um,
Right. And you know what? Since you were 4, that would have been okay.
yeah,
Everyone would have okayed that. If you would have done that without before the pandemic,
right.
people would have been, you know.
Crazy.
So it's almost like, yeah, this pandemic seriously, you take the silver linings, and this is
Yeah,
a big one right
yeah,
there. Yeah.
totally. Yeah. So I'm trying to do more of that and carve out my time. And also when artists are here to take them on that type of walk so they get an introduction to the land and start moving in a different space. So the one person that came for a month arrived right when it started snowing. So that was kind of a crazy, ended up being a really, like the month just went by like that. So that
Yeah.
walk with him was kind of the end of his time, which still had meaning because he was doing um, he just was producing a lot of work when right off the bat when he got here. So it was kind of a good time. He was doing oil painting, so his
Yeah.
paintings had to dry before he left.
Yeah.
So it ended up working out fine, and the weather was a little bit nicer, and we saw more flowers and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it has been a really surreal time, and um, I just I've been wanting to connect with you for so long.
No.
Like, I'm here, I'm around, and then like stuff happens. So yeah, I'm just super happy to have met you, and I hope you get to come back again and
I would love
get
to.
to talk with your
Yes. Yes.
work and all that kind of stuff. So